what we're talking about generally is incentivizing participation in the disclosure process. And more broadly, we're talking about one of the goals that many tech transfer offices share, which is the creation of a virtuous cycle where meaningful innovation is rewarded, which results in funding for further innovation. So, Ian, let me turn to you. How would you say that tech transfer offices should reward innovation?
Good question, Rob. So before I touch on that, I want to touch real quick on the metric question as well, because I think, and in fact, this will feed into that. So it's, there's lots of talk about metrics of technology transfer, university tech transfer, and how we measure that success. It's unfair. So revenues are part of the equation. They have to be, right? Because you can point to that, and certainly that's an easy way of saying you're doing something right if you can return revenues. But it's also unfair to measure a university tech transfer operation just by its revenues, the same way that it would be unfair to measure Apple, take a public company that trades just based on its sales, right? The value of a company that trades on a market is its market cap, and its market cap is based on lots of different things, whatever the public deems its worth. And the worth, right, of a university tech transfer operation is much broader, much more expansive today, especially than just revenues. And I think a key aspect of that is economic development. So something that often doesn't get talked about is the economic development impact that a commercial. So if we think of the innovation economy, the seeds of an innovation economy truly being R1 institutions, research institutions that base itself within that economy, then you can see that the onus on that tech transfer operation is to do more than just derive revenues, but actually make a real impact on the economic footprint, right, of the university. And you do that through like what Reese runs, the accelerator incubator spaces, the research parks, industry partnerships, and a lot of things. And so I think what we're seeing is you can count jobs created, you can count new industry sponsored relationships for continued research. Startups, raise your hand if you are an entrepreneur in this room of a startup that has been touched by an accelerator incubator of MIT or someone else within Boston. So we've got a few, right? So what that tells me is there's a lot of people in this room that are perhaps missing that opportunity, because there are 10 or more, right, accelerator incubators, I think, that MIT touches or has some association with.
We've got a lot.
Yeah, and so what I love to hear from Reese is that he invites in 1/3 of his cohort from the community. We do that at University of Kentucky. We actually went out and got a grant from our state to hire 2 individuals within our office whose sole responsibility is not startups related to University of Kentucky intellectual property, but startups that actually come from our community. And for the same reason that Reese touched on, the sort of the cross-pollination opportunities there, that's why we do that, right? Because we want to bring in the cross-pollination opportunities of them with us and us with them, and that's where you get this real nice blend of an innovation economy that bases itself within the university. So what was the original question, Robert?
Well, okay. Bottom line,
yes.
If an inventor or entrepreneur, a university affiliate comes to you with an invention disclosure, it can mean additional paperwork, it can mean a delay in publication. How do you incentivize participation?
Right. So this is the holy grail, right, within tech transfer is how do you create the right culture within the university where faculty, your prolific inventors across your university, that intellectual capital, how are you incentivizing them to come to you and want to participate in the process, right? So every university has an IP policy that provides some economic participation to its faculty. At University of Kentucky, that's 40%. So 40% of anything we derive, on average, $2.5 million or so that we derive in royalties. 40% of that goes, we cut checks to our faculty, but that does not work to incentivize them to 100% capacity, right? We are not exhausting our pipeline of inventions out there. And so one of the things that I think is discussed a lot, and I think, and I'm new to the tech transfer space, 3 years new, I think I see it, I feel it at an increased pace right now, is the tenure and promotion policy. And how do we reward faculty on their side of the table based on things that they care most about, which is getting tenure. And so what we don't see across the board, right, I'm only aware of a few rare universities that actually expressly provide in their tenure and promotion policy that this type of activity, bringing forth inventions that turn into patents, that turn into commercialization activity, should be counted in the tenure and promotion policy. That's what they care most about. Frankly, I don't have enough success stories at the University of Kentucky to make all of my 2,000 faculty care about that 40% carrot that I hang out. And so I think the conversation within TTOs, within universities, is starting to get louder around tenure and promotion policy. I asked Myron today, MIT is often talked about in places like Kentucky, like MIT, sure, if you don't have a patent, you can't get tenure, which is obviously not true. But that's the way we like to talk about it because we know the culture here at MIT is what it is, right? Faculty on average are more inclined to bring their stuff forward and participate in all this great activity that they have going on. And that's what we're working on. It's cultural, and I think that's where you truly incentivize them is on their side of the table, the things that drive them, which is the tenure and promotion policy. And that's where we will make sure that we are exhausting the pipeline of intellectual capital across our campuses.
So,
Can I jump in with
please.
a question from my friend from Kentucky?
Yes.
To the metric question. So the cynic in me, for instance, right? Think of like finance guy. You're thinking about return. You're thinking about quantifiable dollars. Looks at say the yearly licensing revenue of say the 100 universities that report it every year. And you look at it, and you say, wow. I think a lot more money is being spent on filing. And you should jump in on this too. A lot more money is being spent on filing patents than actually ever is generated from those patents, right? And it even seems like, kind of feels like the VC game, which is for a lot of the TTOs that are in the top 10, it's like a drug that hit, and it hit big, right? It hit to the hundreds of millions or not billions of dollars in licensing revenue. So you say to yourself, why are universities spending all this money on patents, right? And if the metric is other things like innovation and startups and accelerators, why not spend the money there instead, right? So what's the
Glad you threw this softball at me, Michael. So in a bottle, right? It would be that's easy. Why do you spend so much money on so few patents that get monetized, right? So we have millions of patents. We're in the 10 millions right now. 91% of patents are owned by corporations, not by universities. So the small subset of these are owned by research institutions, right? And it's common knowledge or common sort of hearsay or people like to say that 3% or less of patents are actually valuable. So it's not just universities. Why do corporations, right? Why does anyone file patents? So we have a patent system so we can make innovations public and we can innovate based on them. That's what maybe an economist might say is the value to an innovation economy of the patent system. But it's because we have to lay these logs down to build the house, and that's what universities do. We're 10 years out in front of the market, right? If we did not, so think of pharma, right? If we did not file patents on even the things we don't even have an inkling about, but they could be the small molecule that cures cancer, right? If we don't file a patent on it, no one's going to invest in developing that through the next stages. And imagine how much of that work does, right? 60% of our portfolio, we file 100 or so patents a year. 60% of those are life sciences driven, right? Health improving stuff. If we don't file patents on those, 1, 2, 3 are going to actually return revenues to us, right? We might license 10 to 15 of them. But if we don't file patents on those, no one's going to invest in taking them across this chasm or this valley of death or this bridge that people like to talk about. That's why we file it.
I was just going to jump in on the prior question about, how do you encourage faculty or people to engage with the tech transfer office? And I think we're talking about patents, and patents are an important element of what a tech transfer office does, but it's not the only thing. I mean, at MIT, we get involved in everything from material transfer agreements, which are basically how biologicals and other molecules get shared with other research institutions. And we also, a pretty growing significant portion, that was not right, a growing portion of our disclosures are now for software, including open source. And so just to measure us, we do also file a lot of patents, but I think our mission and what we define as intellectual property is that umbrella is bigger than just filing a patent.
Right.
So Roger, unless Stephanie, you want to jump in?
I agree. It's a tough game, and you don't know when the inventions come through the door whether or not it's something that will generate revenue. When we've teased out our big wins over, the history of our revenue as far as we can trace it back, there is a band of really steady income from not necessarily the things that you would think of as like the big earners, but there are things that we've licensed and that you can see in products. And I mean, even, well, from medical imaging technologies to cranberries, we get disclosures from the ag school and we license new varieties of cranberries. And so it is really pushing the technologies out. We patent them. And it's just part of what our mission is. But it is, yeah, a lot of it is really forward thinking. So you're getting the disclosure and thinking this could change the world or not, and some other thing is going to come along, and we're getting it so early. It's a tough.
It's tough.
They do rank colleges based on their, especially public colleges, based on their patent filings, right? So maybe that's an incentive as well, at least from the TTO side.